Hello, Yakri here with another Artifact video, and today we are in for a rare treat. Despite all my shit posting about this game in various places, I am very excited for this update. Not just because I think it's a great thing for the game, and we'll get to that later, but because we've seen something here is very unusual, which is a game developer not just making a concession on their design philosophy. That happens from time to time. You know, there's huge community outrage, games just crashes and burns at launch or something, and they're like, okay, so we don't really believe you know what you want, but we'll pretend like you do and make this small change that the community would like. Here you go, have a cookie, you know, and then they'll mostly carry on with the same design philosophy. They'll change like something token. That happens pretty often, but what doesn't really happen very often is a game developer completely pivoting, and that's what Valve has essentially done, right? With card balance, the section that we're on right here, skill rating and account leveling. This is dubiously, I think you could say the skill rating is definitely a complete pivot as well. Account leveling, I don't think they really promised not to do this, so yeah. But to the card balance, this is the most impressive one, right? So previously their stance was that, yeah, we'll make balance changes, but only if it's absolutely necessary. This is supposed to be a trading card game online in digital format, and people don't want their cards shifting in value radically. And so we're going to try and balance that as perfectly as possible and be really exacting before we release it. And once we do, we're going to pretty much keep it as is, and only if there's like a disaster will we change something. But, you know, we will change things if we absolutely have to. A lot of people are saying that they swore never to change anything. That's not actually true. They just said that, you know, there would have to be a huge imbalance before they would tweak something. They don't mind something being a little imbalanced. Anyhow, point is, that was their stance previously, and their actual stance now, they went from we're not going to change anything to fuck that, flip the table, we're gonna just fucking change cards for the fuck of it. The meta's gonna shift. This is some Dota 2 shit right here. We're just gonna balance patches incrementally all the time between sets. They don't really quite say it that drastically, but they basically do say that they're going to take on a sort of Dota style of balancing, and that they're going to make the meta shift between sets to keep the game more fresh. And that's the right. They're going to go totally the other direction. It's going to change a lot compared to what you would expect from other digital card games like Hearthstone. They don't make that comparison, but it certainly sounds like that's what they're saying. If you read the post yourself, you don't have to take my word for it. Maybe you think I'm crazy to interpret it this way, but I think that certainly sounds like what they're saying here between the nice formal corporate phrasing. They basically said that embracing ongoing card balance for a digital game, is a lot more upsides. Once we shift into a new mindset, we're just decided to go all in on it. You know, blah blah blah. I just want to say that I called this part right here, just this part. The rest of it, I didn't really think they'd actually do this, to be honest. But I said if they would do it in some fucking Reddit post somewhere, probably weeks ago, I said if they did do this, because there were some people saying like, oh, this is impossible. Valve has back painted themselves into the corner. The game is fucked. They cannot balance change cards because the unwashed masses will burn them at the stake. Because it's a trading card game. You can't change card balance. It's impossible now. That's it. It's done. They can't do it. And I said, well, game makes a lot of money. Valve has a lot of money. The game could probably be losing them money constantly, and they could still just make it for shits and giggles and support it to the tune of millions of dollars. That wouldn't be a big deal for them, because they have tons of money, and this game is actually honestly printing money even just from people trading commons. It's ridiculous. So they could just say, "Fuck it, we don't really need this big of a profit margin. Why don't we just subsidize all the lost value people are going to get to their cards?" And that's what they're doing. They will buy back your cards for their peak value 24 hours before the patch details were announced. And that's right here, Artifact buyback program. So like your Axe, if you bought Axe at $9.98, it's probably going to drop down a few dollars now. You can buy them back, and no big deal. Or you can sell them back to Valve, and then you can buy one of the cheaper ones, and you won't have lost your money that you paid for him recently. Now, of course, if you bought them a long time ago for like $20 or $30, that was an unwise choice for you. I did buy them at quite a bit more than $9 myself, but doesn't bother me. If you think that might bother you, just don't buy the shit until it's really cheap, because right about now is going to be a great time to buy all the cards. They're way below pack EV. It's very cheap anyway. Point is, they're just going to subsidize it. They're just going to make balance changes, and who fucking cares if it throws the market into turmoil? They'll just make up the difference for the people who own those cards, and no big deal. I mean, what do they fucking care if it costs them like $10,000, $20,000, $50,000, $150,000 to drop a balance patch? It's not that big a deal. Basically, from the perspective of a game with so many microtransactions and where Valve just makes so much money already. Yeah. So what else is there to really say about this patch? So it's amazing. I think it's amazing that there's a pivot, not in the sense that like oh yeah, I'm impressed, they did it, all those other fucking retards should be doing what Valve is doing here. I mean, whether or not it's a good idea is really a case-by-case basis thing. I think there have definitely been times where the player base has screamed and raged and developers haven't changed their philosophy, and the game has turned out better for the fact that developers haven't changed their philosophy. Whether or not this is going to be better in the long run than sticking with the immutable stuff, I don't know. It's going to make people happier, certainly, which isn't a terrible thing. And it'll be interesting if they do actually go with if you know, this is what they're saying. They don't have to actually do it. It's not a legally binding contract. They could do anything, but assuming they actually balance it in a way more similar to Dota, and we see the like fairly large balance changes throughout each set as sets come out, I think it could be very interesting. It would certainly make it different from other card games because, like, you know, Hearthstone and Gwent and Elder Scrolls Legends, they all have the same issue with players not wanting their cards to change in value, even though there's no economy, even though the cards don't have like a almost real currency value. I mean, Steam Bucks, not really real currency, but similar-ish. You can still buy stuff with them other than the outside of the game, right? So those games have a problem with this as well, and they don't really like to change the balance on things very much. And whether or not, I mean, that's because of the screeching it produces from their player base, or because it's just a general philosophy they have that they shouldn't change balance very often, because it's a very common sort of design philosophy in card games, and I think it really has carried over to games like Hearthstone. Hearthstone does not have the level of balance frequency and speed, right? Like they don't react as quickly as you would expect from a game like perhaps Dota 2, and they don't balance as often as you would expect from, you know, other types of games that have fairly, you know, like on the ball, quick balancing developers. So if they really do go all in on this, it could actually be quite different from some other card games. As to whether or not this is actually good for the game, it's probably fine. I think the part that I wasn't so sure about, even though I suggested it could happen, was what they would do about card value. And so since they're just going to bite the bullet and they're going to refund players essentially for cards they bought that are going to be changing in value, I don't really see a downside to it since they're doing that. It doesn't actually, you know, prevent the TCG model from playing out, and doesn't screw over players who have bought these cards. I kind of wonder if, I'm not sure if it's super clear from this, I kind of wonder if you can sell back cards you bought like a month ago, if they get like torpedoed now, if you can sell them back. I think you can. Before the announcements, anytime before the announcement, and they must be sold by January 4th. So that seems pretty generous. So, you know, if Axe drops down to $3, I can sell mine that I bought for like $12 or something back for $9 and not lose as much money on it. Yeah, you know, not too bad. So that seems fine. Otherwise, shifting meta in card games, is it? Well, you know, it just depends on how well they do with the balance changes, I think. If they do very well in the actual balance changes they make, it's a good thing. If they don't do such a great job, like, you know, we get more yo-yo balance where the set releases, it's kind of shittily balanced, and then they shittily rebalance it, it's always bad, pretty much. So I think the upside really is, for me, is the nuking of like really unpopular things that had a good reason for being unpopular. Cheating Death is the most notable culprit. I don't think it was actually overpowered before, but it didn't fit with the game. People will now bitch about Bounty Hunter a lot, I think, but Bounty Hunter is not on the same level of RNG as Cheating Death. You get an opportunity to react to his little coin flip ability. It's not as impactful as just being immune to death possibly is. And it just doesn't contribute as much to deciding the outcome of games as Cheating Death does, as well as also being more counterable and more reactable and easier to plan around, right? You get to make decisions around it. You don't really as much with Cheating Death. And same thing goes for every other random ability in the game. None of them were on the same level as Cheating Death. So I'm glad it's gone. I'm glad it's a cooldown instead. I think they should do more cooldown abilities instead of coin flips. I would rather Bounty Hunter's thing be a cooldown instead of a coin flip, but I think it's fine either way, honestly. I think it's okay that it's a coin flip. I would still rather be a cooldown, but I don't think it's a big deal. Drow change, also like a pretty big one. I'm not sure that this was necessary. A lot of people will disagree with me, I'm sure. However, like they have this equip effect, purge your opponent's effects from equipped hero. I think this was coming in the next expansion anyway, and they thought, you know what, we should have put this in the first set. We kind of screwed up there, so now we're putting it in the first set, even if only in one area. I think we're gonna get more ways to do this in the future, and that would have been the intended. And I think that's what Gust was balanced around. I think it was balanced around the idea that we'd have more ways to get around silence and purge effects. However, Gust is still a good spell. Drow is still a good hero. So I'm not sure it's a bad thing that she's being nerfed. As for the other things, this is kind of funny. I did a whole video that I've just finished uploading about how much of an impact Bloodseeker's 1-point stat changes. Now, Outworld Devourer's 1-point stat change, yeah, he needs like 12 health. Okay, maybe that's overkill. He needs like 9 health, 10 health. He's a really bad hero. He's really bad. Really, please put him in the next patch. If you're gonna be doing this, just fucking do it. Give him more HP. Rework his signature. Make it more powerful. Make his passive. I don't know. Refund format mana randomly. Anything really. Something. He's terrible. He's still terrible. This isn't gonna help him. Because his sig is bad and his stats are 4/7 is still weak. Because the 4 damage isn't that impactful. Oh yeah, he's the blue hero with 4 damage. Fuck. I just discount. In my other video, in which I talk about Bloodseeker, I was like, I don't think there are any blue heroes with more than 3 damage. Outworld Devourer has more than 3 damage. He sucks dick, but he has more than 3 damage. So there we go. Anyway. What else is there to talk about here? Oh yeah, fuck the other balance changes. You could look at those yourself. I'm not going to talk about them because they're not as hugely interesting. I mean, even Axe's was pretty boring. It's just like, all right, we've reduced his base stats. He's still perfectly good, but he's less obviously so great compared to Bristleback and Legion. Now Legion is definitely the best red card, I would say, by a lot. She probably was before, but it's going to be more obvious to people now. So Legion coin is up. Isn't she a common though? I don't think she'll be worth anything. So the skill and account leveling. They don't have very much else on this. The skill and account leveling is actually pretty interesting. I think they just decided they weren't really being generous enough with the game to get it to appeal to people. Now, I don't think they don't show it here, but if we go, yeah, I got the game up. Can you see this? Yes, it is showing up in OBS. Perfect. This is gonna be kind of a long video, so we can bring this up, and you see you're getting all these card packs, and you're getting all these tickets. So, in terms of what this would cost you if you purchased it from Valve, you don't really get quite this much value because the cards have devalued a lot now. However, this is $65 of value, including the base game price, right? Like the stuff you get with the base game plus this is $65 of value for $20. So. Once you grind to level 16, it doesn't look like it'll take you super long. I mean, level 16 it might take you a couple weeks, but I mean, this was like I played 2 games so far. You will get all this stuff, and this will let you play in the expert modes a lot longer. And if you do well, these event tickets will convert to actual packs, and you'll get a lot more packs. And so you'll have a better starting collection. The overall cost of the game is going to go down because this exists. I think it's a good change. I think I want to make a whole separate video about this. I basically have like two primary points that are kind of opposing in terms of my opinion on the game cost, which is I think that the people who are just bitching and moaning and crying about the game's monetization model and being like, it should be free to play. I think they're acting like whiny children. I think the game shouldn't be free to play. I think free to play models are cancer, and I think the game is a much better monetization model than Hearthstone has, and it's much more consumer friendly and generous to the player. And that's because it's actually cheaper than playing Hearthstone, and you don't have the option to grind, but you also don't have to grind to make the game like a reasonable price. So yeah, it's a lot better. However, that said, the counterpoint to that, the other side of that coin, is that I would not mind seeing the total collection cost for a set be $50. It's $150 right now. I wouldn't mind seeing it be 1/3 that. Now, that's going to make packs and like winning packs almost worthless, so Valve kind of needs to do something differently around that. But I'd kind of like to see it be $50 because I don't think it needs to be $150. I think it's way more generous than any of the other games you can play, any other trading card games out there you can play. But I think it should still be made cheaper, nonetheless, for getting your full collection each time. And I think that would be a positive change if that's what happened. But that said, they are moving in the direction of making this at least a little bit more generous. The total cost for a collection will probably go down because so much more stuff comes with the base game, and it's going to make it easier to get into if you have these extra rewards to pick up. And of course, it gives people something to grind for, and reaching level 200 is probably going to take forever, and you can get these nice little portraits to show that you're awesome, and I assume they will add more stuff to the game in the future. Probably not more rewards because they don't want to give you too much free shit, but yeah, more stuff. And then you get a skill rating. Where's my skill rating? I only played a couple games, so standard play, constructed skill rating. I know it is different for each of these. Phantom Draft skill rating. I guess it is. I guess it is different for either of these. Phantom Draft, Phantom. It's a skill rate, draft skill rating. Yeah, so you get a different little skill rating, and it can go to 75. You will get it by winning match-made games. So this is not MMR, but it's something you can grind. And it is based on your performance in games. I don't know if it goes. This is your won't decrease, but I wonder if you need to. I wonder what fucking. I wonder how it works. It might be just like win tracking, or like after some certain number of wins you get 75, or is it based on your win rate or who you beat? I don't know. So. Yeah. What else is there to say with that? There's lots of neat stuff. Weekly awards, bonuses. You got the skill rating for the people who really wanted that. And this is interesting too. Aside from the pivot that I mentioned earlier being so unusual to see from a developer, it's also the fact that these are the first changes. You know, I've talked about this before, I think, but I don't really buy the belief, the almost certainly incorrect belief, that things like Phantom Draft were introduced as a result of like community influence. It really seemed like they came out with those in like under 24 hours, and they stated that they had just temporarily removed Phantom Draft from tournaments. So I don't buy the idea that was anything but like they were already intending to include that. It was a little buggy in terms of UI, and people were like, "Why'd you remove it?" So they put it back in because it was already done, and they'd already been planning to put it back in anyway, right? So this, on the other hand, this is not the same thing at all. Some of this certainly may have been planned, but the card balance thing, definitely not. They previously said they would not have anything approximating MMR, so the skill rating, probably new. The account leveling, probably not a new thing that they just came up with on the fly. I'd say that was very, very likely in development ahead of time, and always intended to be in the game. Probably because the progression is the main thing that they mentioned last week, and because it has more put into it, right? And they didn't ever say like, we'll never do this about account leveling or some kind of progression system. They did, on the other hand, say they won't do MMR, which skill rating isn't exactly MMR, so I guess I guess it doesn't quite count by their standards. And the card balance thing, they also said that they weren't going to do this kind of card balance. Didn't say they'd never card balance, just not this philosophy of balancing the game. They said it would be a completely opposite philosophy of balancing the game, and so it's clearly a huge change that they have made since launch. Anyway. So, what's my final analysis? Fuck, I don't know, man. This is pretty interesting. I think the game is going in a reasonable direction. I don't think that they've done anything like that would be bad, right? Because I think, and obviously I'm in the minority here, but I think there are a lot of things that the community, particularly certain aspects of the community, Reddit, are asking for that would really ruin the game, essentially. And I don't think they've compromised any of the stuff that I think they're making, not even compromises, but complete changes and in direction of the game in areas where there's no reason not to make people happy, and in areas where perhaps there's a good argument that their approach wasn't the best, but doesn't look like they are leaning towards more free-to-play elements. It doesn't look like they're going to introduce grind to do blah 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 whatever grind elements that like really matter, right? There is of course the account leveling, but they've kept it pretty optional so far. There's those packs, of course, but you get them very quickly and you don't actually need them. And the way that they've approached card rebalancing with the buying back your cards, I think is a pretty healthy way to do it. So I'm pretty pleased about the way it's going. And knock on wood, we'll see more changes along these lines without the game really compromising its core identity of being a sort of high skill cap game with a lot of depth and more integrity and less exploitive systems than what exist in a lot of the more mobile game style free-to-play games these days. And yeah, that's about it. That's my hopes for the future. We'll see how it goes. Thank you all for watching. Yakri out.